military to make gold, and weighs USB drives and the Iron Dome. Israeli salad, Uzi stents, and Jaffa's orange grows. Microchips was us, iPhone cameras us, taco salads us, Bodavabanos us, Olive Garden us, White Cloth for us, Sabra Hamas, Hasbara sus.
Hello and welcome to Bad Hasbara,
the world's most moral podcast by a country kilometer.
That's right. My name is Matt Lieb, and I am your most moral co-host and undecided voter.
And my name is Daniel Mate, and I'm your other most moral co-host and not legal to vote or voter.
Yeah.
I'm one of those voters who shouldn't be voting. And
you're one of those immigrant voters, the ones who are coming into this country and voting Democrat. Because, as we all know, Democrats love immigrants.
So I was minding my business one day up in Canada.
Yep.
You know,
and then
just heating up my seal broth in the igloo. And
I thought you were gonna say like thing of flat ham that you guys tend to eat a lot of,
slathered in maple syrup.
Yeah.
All of those things. Watching SCTV reruns and listening to, I don't know, Chilliwack and Rush, and got an express RCMP, mounted delivery.
The Moose Police.
Yeah, the Moose Police, exactly. When they're not busy quelling indigenous revolts,
right?
There's not a lot of crime in the country. They have nothing else to do but just deliver packages.
Sure.
And they delivered an express letter to me from the Democratic Party saying, "Hello, would you like to come to our country and destroy and undermine democracy by voting illegally and making America not great ever again?
Right.
We'll take away your free health care.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure any kids you have will not have, whatever it is called. A dentist or anything like that." And I said, "Do I ever? One catch, you can't listen to Sloan." There's no E at the end of Sloan, Adam. That's the name of Ferris Bueller's girlfriend.
Oh, she's so hot too.
She was
Shout out
hot.
to Mia Sarah.
But so I got to say I was underwhelmed by your spelling there, Adam. Little Sloan joke for you.
Hey.
Anyway, that's the end of that bit. But yes, I am here illegally on an extraordinary alien visa. So illegally, but I can't vote.
You can't vote, which is just such a shame because, this is the only way that Democrats can stay in power is by allowing Canadians to come across the border and vote, which would actually be sick because then I think we would have universal health care because they would be like, of course I'm voting for someone who at least is going to give universal health care. Seriously. Credit where credit is due to Canada. You guys have that.
We still are holding on to it. Yeah. I just noticed we have new fonts.
Yeah, I made our squares bigger. I made the font different. I don't know if I like it. It was a last minute change.
It looks more newsy.
Yeah, look at us. Look at us all professional style.
Speaking of professional, I just given the girth of this opening riff, as we sometimes tend to go.
Yeah.
Someone on YouTube, one of my favorite YouTube comments ever, said, "I'm sure this podcast has a lot going for it, but every time I try to watch it, I get lost in a real Sapporo can." Adam says, "Yeah, it does look like a sort of beer label font." Anyway, no, but he says every time I try to watch this show, I get lost in the 15 minutes of opening millennial banter. And I said, "Excuse me, sir."
How dare you?
How dare you? I'm a 49-year-old man,
I'm
and
Gen
that's
X.
an elder millennial at pushing the outer limit.
Well, I could, hey, let's see. Who knows how old I am? I'm 28.
People tell me this show has Gen X vibes, and I believe them. So I think it's just very funny that this our rambly patter at the beginning of episodes is being coded as millennial.
I mean, listen, it's not millennial, but it's also, listen, we're old guys. And here's the thing about this show. We're going to sometimes do a long intro. You love it. Fuck off.
You're still here.
You're
That's
still
the proof.
here. 5 stars in a review on
We're
all
just
the
establishing
podcasts.
our right to exist.
That's right. Exactly. This is part of it. Give us reviews, give us stars, join the Patreon, patreon.com/badhasbara. Shout out to producer Adam Levin, who's always on the ones and twos. And today's episode is brought to you by Muslim Aid USA. So Muslim Aid USA is delivering essential medical aid and equipment to the main hospitals in Gaza. They're also providing food packages and vital non-food items such as hygiene kits and other basic necessities to those who are in need. If you would like to donate to Muslim Aid USA, go to mausa.org right now and donate. Do that before you join the Patreon. Obviously, they need the money more than we do. And I say
they deserve it more.
Well, they certainly deserve it more, for sure. Do they need it more than me? I don't really know. I have one baby in daycare, and that ain't cheap. You know?
Yeah, but that daycare is not in the Gaza Strip. So
yeah. I mean, so yeah, you win this round.
thank you.
Gazans.
Thank you.
But yes, please donate to that. And then if you have any left over and you would like to hear a bonus episode every week or so, maybe every other week, depending, then
We had some really good bonus episodes recently.
Dude, I know. We've had great. We had Asa Winstanley from Electronic Intifada on, talking about his home and computer and his electronic devices being raided by the British Secret Service or some shit. One of the I don't know what the British have.
You and I need to study his accent, because every time we try to do British accents, we end up sounding like.
Oh, hello, fishy chip. Yeah, that's. I mean,
and Asa just is so smooth, and
I know. Well, some people have a good accent,
yeah.
but I feel like I listen. I understand that some people come from different regions of England,
yeah,
and they have different regional accents, but to me, it all sounds like chimney sweep. Big deal. That's a noble profession. Okay.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiri. And then our other bonus episode was with Ephraim Menick from Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Yes, and that was a great episode. And I also later found out that he does not really do interviews. He's very, very rarely been interviewed, and he did a whole I think hour and a half with us talking about his the way he grew up with Zionism, going to Zionist summer camp, and him finding his way out of that bullshit, and being someone who's been a staunchly pro-Palestine voice for a long time in the entertainment and music industry, which is not exactly the most friendly to people with those types of views.
Dang right.
So that's a great episode, and there's going to be more episodes like that are going to be on Patreon. So please, patreon.com/badhasbara. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah, Matt.
What's the spin?
Well, the spin this Election Day Tuesday, which is when we're recording. Just
that's right.
Listener note, as you're listening to us, whatever we say that sounds brilliant and as if we recorded it after the election, because every take we're going to give is going to be completely prescient and on the nose. We don't know what happens.
We don't know. Who knows?
So I got this concert album, which was the first annual benefit concert for the Congressional Black Caucus in I think it was 1974, and we had groups like War and Curtis Mayfield and Kool and the Gang and Gladys Knight and the Pips. So that seemed political.
That is political.
This just arrived. Fishbone, their early '80s EP.
Hell yeah.
Songs like "Ugly" and "Lion Ass Bitch," which is the song that the Roots played when Sarah Palin came on Jimmy Fallon. But the song that seems to fit today is "Party at Ground Zero," because no matter who wins this election, we will all be pink vapor stew soon enough.
Yeah.
Especially if their Zionism prevails, because Israel's trying to take us there. Mm-hmm. And then, just for no political reason whatsoever, Quincy Jones died recently, a couple days ago. So I've got his seminal album, "The Dude." Rest in peace to an absolute legend. Yeah,
a true legend, a true real one. He's the dopest. And I don't have anything spinning, but I am wearing my Power Man 5000 t-shirt. Shout out to Spider, who is Rob Zombie's brother. That is the Power Man. Do you know Power Man 5000?
I don't know who is this powerful man.
He's a very powerful man. He's got the strength of
That was the most Donald Trump thing you've ever said. He's a very powerful man.
Very powerful
powerful.
man. He has the strength of 5,000 men, making him a full power man. Yeah, no, this is just a band. They did songs like When Worlds Collide. It's doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter because the music that you pick out is stuff that I believe our audience probably would enjoy, whereas my musical tastes are they're just my own trashy tastes. I mean, you talk about elder millennial. I listen to a lot of new metal. I think it's fun. Rap and rock at the same time. Boom, dot, da, boom, dot, da, ema. That's what I say to that. Go! All right. So
I feel for you, buddy.
Yeah.
I grew up in the era of the bands who influenced those bands who are much better than those bands, like Faith No More. And,
yes, Faith No More is great.
But when the late 90s, it was a grim time, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, no, it was the best time of my life. The only weird thing about that music now is realizing that the people who were doing it were adults. Because I was a middle school kid, so Korn was for me, and then realizing that adults were, like most of the album sales and being like, what the fuck was wrong with adults in 1999 that they related to Limp Bizkit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah.
So today we have a guest, a returning Bad Hasbara champion. All right. This is a guest who's been on before and he's coming back for more. Another round of. All right. So he's a historian of Palestine and he is the founder of the Palestine Nexus newsletter. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone else, please welcome back Zach Foster. Beep, 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 beep.
Yay! You're emotionally damaged, Jewishly.
What's up, dude?
Yo, why'd you guys stop? Keep that going.
Okay, that's all. I got this one too.
Tells you everything you need to know.
How you doing?
Hey, Zach.
So, yo.
It's been so long. I've been waiting. Say something in Arabic. Come on, give it to me.
Do it.
Give me.
Daniel, can I let you in on a secret?
Yes, please.
I was YouTubing my name and like, oh, is there any of my content that is circulating around YouTube? An episode of Bad Hasbara pops up and you can just click directly to the point in the pod where my name is mentioned. And it's you, Daniel, saying how sexy my Arabic is.
Yeah. It's true. I believe we've said this a few times on this show where we've just kind of reminisced back to when we had you on the first time and we were both just like, damn, that accent is good.
Man, that was guttural.
That was good. That was, there was a lot of heart in that. It's a beautiful ass language.
Yeah.
Offering free lessons to you too, anytime, anywhere.
Hell yeah.
I'm sure it'll come up as we go through the episode and speak about the region.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Zach, how have you been since last we saw you? Everything good?
Just trying to manage the work genocide balance and
hard.
hanging in there.
Hanging in there. That's good. That's good. I have something for you to start off this pod. Usually, sometimes we will start with some Bad Hasbara right up top. Just Daniel and I will talk about it, and then we bring on the guest. But this time, I thought it would be perfect to have you on for this because it's just one of those things that I realized we had never talked about before. I don't think ever on this podcast, this particular type of Hasbara where we talk about areas A, B, and C. So let's start off first with this tweet that Daniel, I believe you found this from a guy named Jacob Ben David Linker.
He sure does some linking here.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of linking. So he goes, I didn't want to involve myself in the Coates debate when it was fresh because everybody was really mad. But I had a couple of thoughts. One, the treatment of Palestinians in Area C is really indefensible. I don't think anybody pro-Israel has ever really addressed this on the merits. But of the 5.5 million Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, about 400,000 live in Area C. So the question becomes how fair it is to paint the entire situation of the worst situated 7.5% of Palestinians as the norm for the whole situation.
And let's just pause and note for the people who aren't watching. Can we go back to the tweet?
Yes, please.
His Twitter handle has his name. Well, it's Jacob A. Linker.
Yes.
But then, whatever, the description, his name then has a series of
emojis.
So let's describe them. There's
Hamza.
It's a palindrome, basically. It's an emoji palindrome. There's
Yeah.
Hamzas, or how would we say that in Arabic, Zachary?
Hamza.
Hamza? Okay, good.
Yeah.
On either end, followed by two menorahs, and in the center, a Star of David. What are we getting? What vibes are we getting from that arrangement? What energy are we supposed to take? What's it giving?
Yeah, it's it's giving. Whenever I see the Hamza, I'm like, it's giving cultural appropriation. But it's not necessarily. I understand that there is obviously Jewish history with the Hamza and stuff, and I'm not
Maybe he's Mizrahi.
He could be. But what it's giving me is I love Israel and I love hummus, which is a type. That's what it's giving me.
Yeah, it's giving me like my Zionism is grounded in my Judaism, which is grounded in my spiritual connection to that entire region. And I think broadly and in a nuanced and sophisticated way about this that may surprise some of you.
Yeah, there's no Israeli flag, there's no beeper, there's no banana peel, and there's no fucking yellow ribbon. No, instead, it is a palindrome of Jewish symbols. So liberal Zionism is what we're talking about here. And this idea of Area C being where the real bad stuff is happening is, I think, is fascinating to me because it lives in this alternate reality in which areas A and B are both 100% within the control of the Palestinians, and that's sovereign Palestinian land. So, Zach, can you explain to me where you see the Hasbara in this?
Well, I think if you look at the numbers, you would find that the vast majority of the 600 plus Palestinians killed in the West Bank over the past 13 months were killed not in Area C. They were killed in areas A and B, overwhelmingly probably Area A, if I had to guess here. And the reason is because Jenin, Nablus, Nur Shams, the triangle in the north of the West Bank where the resistance to Israeli apartheid is fiercest, that's all Area A. We're talking about urban centers, refugee camps, wherever you have dense population centers of Palestinians, you're talking about Area A. And those are the areas where the Israeli military has carried out the most grotesque massacres over the past year and a half. They went into Jenin back in July, if you recall, and bulldozed all the streets, ripped up all of the water pipes, and completely leveled the city. They did the same in the Nur Shams refugee camp. They're doing the same in Nablus. And that's all Area A. So I'm having a difficulty even understanding where this even comes from.
What he's talking about at all. So let's back up.
Yeah, because where does this division and nomenclature of the different areas come from? We're talking about an Oslo.
Yes, from the Oslo Accords.
Yeah.
This was part of the plan, as far as I can tell. Now, Zach, you can correct this and maybe expound on it with your good brain, but my bad brain knows just this much. It's that the Oslo Accord specified 3 different cantons of areas in which there was differing controls of like what was sovereignty, what was Palestinian sovereign quote unquote area, what was Israeli controlled area. And so this is from B'Tselem. This map right here shows it. So Area C is the stuff in red, where there's full Israeli control of security, Israeli civilian control of land issues, restricted Palestinian building and development, settlement expansion, vast exploitation of natural resources to Israeli advantage, and the population of Area C is 180,000, not 400,000, 180,000 Palestinians, and there are 325,500 Israeli settlers.
That sure looks like an enormous amount of land. I wonder why there are so few Palestinians there.
Yeah, well, that way there's less people to oppress.
There's less people to be caught in the worst circumstances.
Yes. These are
settlement blocks, right? That's what we're talking about, Area C. No?
I think the correct way to think about areas A, B, and C is the same way you would think about the history of Zionism writ large, which is that the Zionist project wants as much land as possible with as few Palestinians on that land as possible. That's the essence of Zionism. We want the land without the people on it. And the same approach was taken during the Oslo process, during which time Israel said, okay, we're going to, the 60% of the West Bank, which is Area C, that has 100, 200,000 Palestinians living on it, that's perfect, right? That's what we're going to annex. Netanyahu famously said in a leaked recording in 1998 that he was willing to sabotage the entire Oslo process just in order to retain control of the Jordan Valley, which is the bulk of Area C.
Right.
So this has long been, Area C has long been one of the areas of the West Bank that Israel has wanted to to maintain control over. And this we knew already in June 1967, in a cabinet meeting that was held just a week after Israel occupied and conquered that territory. The Israeli cabinet determined, it was June 19th, 1967, in an Israeli cabinet meeting, they determined the eastern border of the state of Israel will be the Jordan River, and it will be the Jordan River Valley. That was determined 57 years ago. And if you look at Israeli policy since, it had which towns, which refugee camps were destroyed and ethnically cleansed in the 67 war? It was in the Jordan Valley. 88% of Palestinians living in the Jordan Valley were ethnically cleansed in the 67 war itself. And those policies continue unabated to the present day, where you have Palestinians in the West Bank are 100 times more likely to receive Palestinians in Area C are 100 times more likely to be issued a demolition order on their home than they are likely to be given a permit to build a home. So there's no question that Israel has...
That just makes it more valuable when you get the permit. You know, it's like the golden ticket in Willy Wonka.
Yeah, exactly. They don't mention the part that, you know, the golden ticket, the people who don't get the golden ticket, the people who aren't eating Willy Wonka chocolate are systematically being displaced.
First prize is a Cadillac. Second prize is a set of steak knives. Anyone want to see third prize?
Fuck you, you're fired.
Third prize, your home is destroyed.
Oh, but so like
always be closing ABC.
So areas A, B, and C, right?
Yeah.
So like what I think is interesting about this ideas of A, B, and C. Well, first of all, so areas A and B then are technically under the Oslo Accords or Oslo process are supposed to be like Area A, which you see, is with the lines through it, right? That is the Palestinian Authority control, whereas Area B is the Israeli Security Cabinet and Palestinian civilian control.
Which isn't that just to say Palestinians are tried under a military court and police? So, like, what does that mean?
Yes. So, I mean, maybe you can expand on this further, Zach, but from what I'm, seeing here, it seems to me like areas like Area A, with all of these towns that you previously had talked about and these villages that aren't even named on here, these are the ones where you're constantly seeing the most death and destruction being brought to the Palestinian people by the IDF. This is where you see all of the videos of IDF soldiers coming in and just like illegally detaining, arresting, and holding people prisoner, hostages, essentially.
In the areas controlled supposedly by the Palestinian Authority.
By the Palestinian Authority, yeah.
What's the deal with limited sovereignty?
Yeah,
that's exactly correct. The 3,600 Palestinian hostages, also known as administrative detainees,
right?
Which is a strange way of referring to it, right? Because have they committed any administrative violations? Did they?
Well, they forgot to file their paperwork. It sounds a lot like administrative detention means like you filed something wrong in the mailroom, as opposed to just arresting children for the crime of walking.
You forgot to register to have rights to exist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those Palestinians overwhelmingly are from areas A and B. There's no Palestinians in Area C. As we already said, there's 180,000 Palestinians in Area C. Right. They're the ones being ethnically cleansed. Those are the Palestinians in Masaf Yatta. Those are the Palestinians in Humsa in the north. And those are the Palestinians in the E1 zone that Israel's trying to take over.
Can you explain the E1 zone? Where is that?
The E1 zone is the area of the West Bank that lies between Ma'ale Adumim, which is the most eastern suburb of Jerusalem. I mean, it's a settlement, right? It's an illegal settlement, but it's considered to be a suburb of Jerusalem. So the area to the east of Ma'ale Adumim, going all the way to the Dead Sea, that area is known as E1 zone. And for example, Khan al-Ahmar is a very well-known Palestinian village in that region. Those Palestinian towns and refugee camps, they're the ones who are most often subject to ethnic cleansing. And actually, I would say those are the Palestinians that resist the least, because they have no rights at all. They have zero rights, right? Whereas maybe in areas A and B, you might say the Palestinians have some limited sort of autonomy, and there's some resemblance of some sort of Palestinian entity that kind of, is a slave to the Israeli military and allows the Israeli military to enter those areas whenever it pleases. But nevertheless, there's some semblance, at least some facade of Palestinian autonomy. But of course, in Area C, there is no facade, right? It's the Israeli military that issues the building permits, that polices the streets, that cleans the streets, that tells Palestinians, whether they're allowed to go to school or not, right? Or whether or not they're allowed to pick olive groves.
And when you say cleans, you mean ethnically. So, but there's a straw man here, right? Because I haven't finished reading Coates's book, but he's saying here, he's seeming to claim that Coates is depicting life in Area C as if it's what's happening everywhere. But what Coates, from what I've seen, is describing as things like checkpoints, Jewish-only roads, the daily humiliations and invasions of privacy. None of those things are native, so to speak, to Area C. That's just life under the whole occupation everywhere.
In fact, if you even think about the division of the West Bank more generally, the fact that there are these three areas is in and of itself part of Israel's project of cantonization and Bantustanization and ghettoization. Look at the map again. There's no connectivity between the various areas between areas A. In order to get from area A, which is Hebron, to area A, Tubas, to area A, Tulkarm, you have to pass through area C. In other words, you have to pass through areas where Israel has complete sovereignty, total civilian and security control. And that's obviously very intentional, right? Israel's project in the West Bank is to divide and conquer, pit Palestinians against one another. Prevent Palestinians in Area A from traveling or moving to Area C. Prevent Palestinians in Area B from building home in Area A. This is all part of the apparatus.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's everything. They've worked specifically. They've made this Area C make it so that nothing is contiguous. It is completely cut off. All of these areas are surrounded by Area C, which is controlled 100% by Israel. And the strange thing about this is, like, you talked about in 1967, they had this, the cabinet got together and said, we need to control the Jordan Valley. You forget, looking at this, that this whole areas A, B, and C thing was part of a peace plan. This was the idea of somehow creating the two-state solution. And one of the things being, Israel gets to control even more of the West Bank than it legally was authorized to control before the peace process started. Like that is, I think, an insane thing to me. The idea that this is like now set in stone almost. I mean, it's obviously, it is still considered an occupation under international law, but Area C to me is just is as being like a very specifically named thing, makes the dream of those cabinet members in 1967 a reality, does it not?
That's absolutely correct. And in fact, if you look back to Yitzhak Rabin's campaign in 1992, when he was campaigning for prime minister, he campaigned on the message of getting Gaza out of Tel Aviv. In fact, there's even one quote where he says, my plan is to push Gazans into the sea, or something to that. I'm going to push Gaza into the sea. He actually says that. The whole concept of Oslo was separation, hafrada, right? The idea was, we need to extricate ourselves from the Palestinians, total separation. This was the idea when the wall first came about. Yitzhak Rabin proposes, we're going to build a wall to separate ourselves from the Palestinians. And so if you really think about what Oslo was, it was a way for the Israeli left and the Israeli center to tell the world we are making sacrifices for peace. By the way,
Yes.
this was the same rhetoric during the disengagement plan in 2005. It's all
Yes.
it's all part of the same story, which is to say that we are making painful sacrifices for peace. We're giving up land. We're giving the land back to the Palestinians when in fact no such land is actually being given back to the Palestinians, which we know because on any given day, on any given week, on any given month over the past 30 years, the Israeli military is entering all areas of the West Bank, all areas of Gaza. There's no Palestinian sovereignty in the West Bank. That's just a myth.
And it can't be stated too many times that these so-called generous concessions from Israel, whether it's in Oslo or more insidiously in Camp David, which is always held up as the sine qua non of Israeli generosity and magnanimity. In fact, those are not concessions. The Palestinians are the ones who have made, over and over and over again, enormous concessions to what they are entitled to, which is the whole of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's even if you want to just take 1948 out of the mix and only look at 1967.
Right.
Article 1 of the Geneva Convention? It's inadmissible to acquire territory
With force.
by force
Yeah.
in a war, whether you started the war or didn't start the war. So you don't even pull out that
Bullshit.
that
line.
red herring canard,
Yeah.
although Israel did start the war. But so every concession, starting with the Palestinians, the PLO saying we will recognize, Israel's
Right
right to exist along these borders, is a historic concession. And then certainly starting with Oslo, giving up, allowing a single Jewish settler to remain in some final status agreement in the
Right.
West Bank is an enormous concession. And
Look,
everything Israel gets is not them giving something up, it's them taking something.
That's right.
You could say that the Oslo process itself was the result of an emerging Israeli consensus after the first Intifada that we cannot directly control the lives of millions of Palestinians forever. Recall that from 87 to 93, you had daily protests, daily riots. You had attacks on Israeli military targets. You had something like 180 Israelis be killed during that 6-year period. Of course, Palestinians, about 1,100 Palestinians were slaughtered during that same period. The violence is always disproportionate. But
Right.
nevertheless, Israel was facing real costs to maintaining this occupation. So what was the plan? The plan was we need to subcontract out the policing of the streets. We need to subcontract out the dirty work. We need a kind of a compliant subcontractor, which was the Palestinian Authority project of the Palestinian Liberation Organization led by Yasser Arafat, who was isolated.
It wasn't defund the police, it was delegate the police.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
And so there was no real withdrawal at all. In fact, as we already established, Israel doubled its settler population from 93 to 2000 during the time when it's supposedly giving land back to the Palestinians. In fact, it's even taking even more land and expanding the settlement enterprise, confiscating more land, destroying more Palestinian homes, more Palestinian olive groves. At a time when Israel, again, is supposed to be giving land back, they're actually taking more land.
Yeah. Well, they never miss an opportunity to not miss an opportunity to take more land. Yeah, it is. It's just crazy reading this tweet, realizing it's coming from this level of Hasbara, like liberal Zionist Hasbara, that I don't think I've actually seen before. Because I've seen the argument, by liberal Zionists about occupation in general being like wrong, and then 1,000 reasons why you still need to support this war, support this genocide, support the ethnic cleansing. I've not seen this granular of an argument where you're trying to act like actually the only thing that's wrong in the West Bank, or it seems like with regard to Palestinians at all, is in Area C. Like the fact that they control Area C is under full Israeli control, that's wrong. And then to act like, but hey, that's not all of the Palestinians. There's so many more who live in freedom in places like Jenin, Hebron, Gaza. It's like that is a fucking insane thing. I want to continue reading this tweet. Two, a lot of Israeli restrictions like checkpoints were pretty justified as immediate responses to problems and on the assumption that they would be temporary things that only lasted a few years.
Pretty justified. That's a great phrase.
Yeah, it's not fully, but it's like pretty justified. Like it's low key justified to do some apartheid. A lot of the issue is the sense of the permanence about them, not that they popped up to begin with.
Sort of like the occupation.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like Zach, when you were talking about how immediately after conquering this territory, accidentally, oops, what are we going to do with this, all this land that we didn't want? You know, they had a cabinet meeting, but to the world, they were totally nodding along and being like, of course it's temporary. It's, you know, it's a temporary occupation.
Hey, a war just happened, and we just got to make sure we're secure for a second.
Now we need to go through an auction process, lost and found. We have to vet the people who found this territory, who we going to give it to, all this paperwork. Mm-hmm. So now he's talking about the headache of that, and I mean, I guess you could make the case. I'd like to hear him make this case. Okay, fine. Let's say like after 9/11, the TSA was justified for a couple of years, but the permanence. But that was the whole fucking point.
You're right.
There's if you study the history of Israel's occupation of the territories, you'll understand very quickly that there was never any intention of withdrawing from the territories. Not in 67 or 68, and not in 93 or 94, and certainly not since. And we know this because the Israeli military underwent an extensive survey of every town, of every village. It developed a population registry. You don't do that if you're planning on leaving in a year or two.
No,
there was an attempt to solidify, to intensify Israeli occupation forces in the occupied territories almost from the day the occupation began.
Right.
And in
they
fact,
wanted to know where to send parting gifts.
Exactly.
Zach.
How do you send thank you cards if you don't know where everyone lives and their name and their first and last name and the name of all their relatives, their family tree?
It has been our honor to occupy you and brutally dominate your lives for the past span of time.
Yes.
We wish you the
Unfortunately,
best
it's time
as you
for
embark.
us to go. Yeah, it's like writing in someone's yearbook.
Now it's time to say good night.
Shout out to Ringo. But yeah, this is like just finishing off his tweet. I learned in law school that discrimination, parenthetical, the drawing of distinctions, are okay so long as they're proportionate to a particular need. So the question is whether burdens Israel puts on Palestinians are proportionate to the legitimate Israeli concerns. And then finally he writes, 3, the issue of, quote, fault comes up. Basically, Coates treats everything as the Israeli Jews' fault. Coates dismisses these complex debates of fault and causation as irrelevant because he thinks the status quo is unconscionable. To some extent, I think there's validity to saying, quote, no matter whose fault it is, the status quo is shit. And I want Israel to do whatever it is in its power to improve things to the extent feasible.
To what extent
Quotes
do you
doesn't do this at all, and it's just blaming
Matt,
the Israelis for everything.
I need to know, to what extent do you think it's not valid to say that?
Yeah, I mean,
what more needs to be said?
Right, exactly. The
status quo is shit, and the party with the power to do something about it should end it.
But this gets to like I think the perfect liberal Zionist mindset, which is that like I understand where you're coming from and not wanting a government to do oppression, ethnic cleansing, apartheid.
But you're making me feel blamed, and this doesn't feel equitable.
Yes, but you're making me feel blamed, and also like it's a tough situation because what happens once the boot is off their neck? Are they going to come after me? Because if that's the case, we got to keep that boot on their neck till they calm down. Like this is like the perfect, like liberal Zionist thing of being but my feelings.
Right, and to channel another Beatles song, this is the most insidious Beatles song of all.
Octopus's Garden.
No, well, ooh,
yeah, Octopus's Garden is an anti-Semitic trope. Ringo, I'm on to you, motherfucker.
No, it's We Can Work It Out. My dad and I actually we lead this workshop about parent-adult-child relationships, and I had the idea of bringing in this song as an example of the attitude we often take in relationships, where it's like you're acting on the surface, you're acting conciliatory, but the whole thing is a fucking monologue about see it my way, try to see it my way.
Try to see it my way.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's this nonstop monologue. It has no chorus. It has no, it just keeps going on and on and on. And the accusation is, why do you see it your way with the risk that our love may soon be gone? We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short.
Yeah.
And there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. Get under,
It's
like,
a very, just do it in an Israeli accent, and it does sound like half the things that a liberal Zionist in Israel would say.
Try to see it my way. Why do we have to keep on talking till I cannot go on? Why do you see it your way at the risk of knowing that the peace process could soon be gone? We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short. אין זמן, חבר שלי. For fussing and fighting, my friends. Why is all this intifada? We can work it out. Just shut the fuck up and get back in your home.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah.
It also reminds me of the first, or at least one of the interviews with Ta-Nehisi Coates that blew up, the CBS interview, where the guy, I forget his name now, Dokupil, who got circumcised twice, by the way.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyways,
The first time was real. The second time was just you invited a rabbi to poke his dick.
I encourage the audience to Google that story. But
we've covered it.
Oh, you've covered it. Okay,
that's very bad Hasbara content.
It is on our Will Menaker episode, which is also a Patreon-only episode with a portion of it available to the public.
Yes. So go on.
So in that interview, he says the same thing. He says, if I take away the accolades, I take away the awards, this
context.
book would the context, the history, the occupation, the ethnic cleansing. If I take everything away, this
comprehension
book would,
of the English language.
Yeah, my ability for abstract thought.
Good faith.
Yeah.
And then this book would be at home in the backpack of an extremist or something to that effect.
Yes.
And then he goes on to say that Ta-Nehisi Coates lays all the blame at the doorstep of Israel. And Coates' response, I think, is a very admirable one, which is something to the effect of, look, if the perspective you are giving us right now is everywhere, right? You just turn on CNN, you turn on Fox News, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. They're all telling you. They're all presenting this sort of both sidesism, this sort of, well, there's this and there's that. There's the occupier and the occupied, and presenting them as if these are somehow two equal sides to a story. When in fact, obviously, that's total nonsense. And in fact, when you actually take the side of the oppressed and you take the side of the people who are under the boot of the occupier and who are the victims of an apartheid regime, well, then how is that perspective not more? How is that perspective not more prominent on mainstream news channels and in the mainstream media? And of course, that is the ultimate issue here, which is that when you are trying to fight oppression, you have a duty and a responsibility to present that point of view. Your duty is not, when you're trying to solve for injustice, your duty is not to sort of both sides the issue, which is apparently the viewpoint of the American mainstream media.
Especially since, as Noam Chomsky pointed out in Manufacturing Consent, it takes way fewer words to lay out hegemonic dogma, to repeat. You actually need he's talking about the boundaries of concision in mainstream media and how that serves to privilege the voices we always hear and to exclude the voices we don't. Because if I'm going to come on and, CNN in between commercial breaks and explain how the U.S. is a imperialist force and supports dictators in Indonesia and South Vietnam or South America and whatever, and say something that goes against what we always hear all the time, I need time to actually unspool that. Right. And that already is taking up all the space. Right. With concision, you can just speak in cliches and sound bites, like Israel has the right to self-defense.
Right. And it feels like, it's a gut feeling, right? It's like, well, yeah, my gut says it's right that the Palestinians don't want peace. They want to kill all the Jews. And it's like, that's not your gut telling you that. That is actually just years of imperialist propaganda.
That's your
Like,
prejudice. That's your well entrenched prejudice.
Yes,
It's there for a reason.
Yes. Unfortunately, while you were sitting there saying things like Palestinians teach their children to hate Jews, your your imperialist government has taught you to hate Palestinians and Arabs and communists and anyone who goes against the interests of the United States. From birth, you've been taught this. So you've actually been taught, my dear Westerners, to hate far more people that exist.
I don't know, Matt. I think you're exaggerating. I think you could think about the people who support Israel as kind of being divided into three areas, right? There's sort of area A, area B, and area C. At most, there's 7.5% of the people who really hate Palestinians who live in that area C. So I don't know why we're using that area as representative of the whole.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I need to rethink my thoughts because all I can think of is I support areas A, B, and C. Areas ass, areas cock, and areas balls.
Areas.
That was good.
Areas. Hey, you're fucking occupying these people.
I'm
Areas.
so stupid.
Be serious here.
Yeah.
Areas. See this fucking fist.
See this fist? It's in your fucking teeth.
See this watch? This
Yeah.
watch costs more than your car.
Yeah. Well,
A to apartheid.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is just like, seeing something like this where you're just you're being told it's funny, we're cantonizing these Palestinians, right? But we're also cantonizing our empathy in this. Like, let's cantonize the way what we feel empathy towards and what is apartheid here? We're cantonizing that. We're going like, well, okay, obviously there's like a little bit, like just a teensy bit, but it's also very useful for anyone to who wants to continue this war of ethnic cleansing on Gaza, because then you get to say, well, if we're judging by this particular narrative, the idea of like only the West Bank is experiencing apartheid. Only the West, and only in this very particular area in which there are only 180,000 Palestinians, then that means the 2.3 million people who live in Gaza are actually free. And those people have been free since the, quote, end of the occupation in 2005. Yeah.
This is one of the, I think, one of the most poignant examples of Hasbara, which is that every Hasbararist has to draw their line somewhere, right?
Right.
Oh, the problem is Gaza. The problem is the West Bank, but Gaza, we can commit genocide. Oh, the problem is Area C, but Area B, A and B is great. Oh, the problem is the occupation, the part of it within Israel. Wow, everything is lovey-dovey. Everyone has to draw their line because they are in this constant tension of how do we create a Jewish and a democratic state when we give Jews extra special privileges.
Yes.
And so you're constantly trying to come up with something that, well, beyond that, but that's beyond the pale, right? Because you have to justify your own kind of moral high ground. And the way you do that is by drawing this arbitrary line in the sand wherever you think it's gone too far.
Yes.
Because ultimately, the problem is not Area A, it's not Area C, it's not Gaza. The problem is the idea that Jews should have more rights than other people in Palestine. That's the problem.
Right.
And if you say that,
Zach, they're not drawing lines in the sand. They're drawing lines in the fertile, nutrient-rich, irrigated soil
that we irrigated ourselves with our own
drip
two
technology.
hands.
Drip technology.
Yeah, through
That's Israeli
technology,
tech.
through doing desalination, and through incredible startups that make burger taste better.
Startup Nation.
Yeah, startups that make burger. I don't know why. Whenever I hear an Israeli say burger, it makes me laugh.
Yeah, there's a restaurant, and I remember this from my 10 months there. I don't know if they still have the brand. I think you've visited that area much more recently than I have, Zach. Do they still have Burger Ranch? Is Burger Ranch still a chain there?
Burger's Bar. Burger Ranch is pretty awful, but
Yeah.
It's
no
the Israeli
cheese.
Israeli innovation. I think is reaching all-time highs in 2024. I mean, you've got kind of a genocide within a genocide.
Oh yeah,
You've got accidentally getting shot in the head twice.
that's
I mean,
right.
these are Israeli innovations.
I know they invent new shit every day, and every day I go like, I gotta add to the theme song. There's just not enough new inventions in the theme song. Well, we are going to continue this conversation, but we got to take a little itty bitty break. So everyone, please stick around, listen to these commercials, and we will be right back.
Jumping Jacks was us.
And we're back. All right, this is Badass Bar. Our guest is Zach Foster. Guys, it's election day. And you know what? We're gonna put this episode out tonight. It's coming out tonight, so people can be with us on election day to know. You'll learn nothing because obviously this is recorded hours earlier, and you're not going to learn shit about what's happening.
These are the days of miracle and wonder. I mean,
that's right.
You know, when my grandparents were kids, you know how many days they had to wait between recording a podcast episode and putting it out? I mean,
years.
You literally can't calculate it.
Yeah. But nowadays, you can record an episode and have it out within hours.
In people's actual ear holes.
That's crazy.
The same night.
So yeah, we're not going to obviously know who won. I don't think we're going to know. I don't think you're going to know who won by the time this comes out, because I have a feeling that this is going to be a squeaker. But I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the narratives that has been happening. So there's a comedian who I've talked about before on this podcast named Eliza Schlesinger. And I'm just going to talk about a little bit of this tweet that she wrote and extrapolate a general sentiment that I've seen among the liberal Dem pro-Israel crowd. So Eliza writes how I don't normally share who I vote for. I think it's personal, and you can vote conservative or liberal on so many things and still be a good person, blah, 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 blah. But then she finally gets to, I voted early and I voted Kamala, not because I like her tax plan or her economic plan, and I'm not pumped about her Israel vibe. But she stands for democracy, yada, yada, yada,
She
yada.
Let's what's the yada? She believes in America and in coming together. She believes women are humans. Okay, there's a actual policy.
No, yeah.
plank you could support.
Coming together is always really exciting.
Yeah, I hate coming separately, but it's really hard to time it.
Bum.
So anyways,
Speaking of yet another Beatles song.
So yeah, this idea that I have seen on the pro-Israel Democrat side, this thing where they talk about, listen, Kamala isn't a perfect candidate, and then they'll say something along the lines of, and I don't trust her on Israel. I'm not sure what fucking reality these people are living in. They're living in a reality in which somehow Kamala Harris has not spent the majority of her incredibly short campaign for president doing everything in her power to make it clear that there will be no change between Biden's policies in Gaza and Biden's policies with regard to the Palestinians and hers. And so
there will be, Matt. They will be delivered identically, but more achingly.
Yes, it'll be more. They'll be more sad about it.
They'll be sad.
The notes they write on the bombs will be, "Oh, we're so sorry we had to kill you."
To do this.
It'll be the same lyrics set to different music. It'll be a remix.
Yeah. I hope one day we can have peace. It'll say on a missile.
This hurts us more than it hurts. Sorry, running out of room.
Yeah, sorry.
Why did you make us do this to you?
Yes, exactly. We're only hitting you because we love you. So here's just for those of you who maybe forgot, here's just a little montage of some of Kamala's best moments talking about Israel and Palestine and what's going on there currently.
It has a right to be heard, but right now I am speaking. And let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I sure Israel has the ability to defend itself. A terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care
Guys,
about our democracy.
I'm sorry, Matt. Just please
guys,
stop.
I hear you.
I actually, I haven't cried about Gaza. Okay, I've had a lot of strong opinions about it. I've had concerns. I've had a lot of debates, right?
Sure.
But the emotional dam just broke when she spoke about the price of groceries. This lemon that I bought the other day, it shouldn't have been $2.
When I go on DoorDash, okay, and I ask for Calabrian peppers because I like Calabrian peppers and I don't want to go all the way to Sprouts to get Calabrian peppers. And then all of a sudden, the driver tells me, "Oh, we don't have it. They don't have any more Calabrian peppers. Can I get you this other? It's like off-brand. It's a different type of pepper." And I say, "Yeah." And I come back and the bill it's $10 plus the tip. Why do I have to tip? This is like a genocide for me in a way.
It's a genocide for my wallet. And folks, we are not making fun of genuine economic fucking insecurity.
Oh, no, absolutely not. We're making fun of the fact that she would in any way compare that to a literal fucking genocide when what she's talking about, the context is, I understand that those people have had relatives who have died, but also groceries cost a lot. You fucking snake.
I know that these people are inconsolably broken inside from what's happening to their families and their people. But do you know what cheers them up? Saving money.
I mean,
coupon.
Guys,
here's a coupon for that genocide.
The trauma of trying to cancel my subscriptions. They hide the cancel button, and I can't find the cancel button, and it drives me crazy.
I think before genocide, we need to figure out where exactly they put the cancel button on the DoorDash app, okay? And how come when I get Grubhub, I accidentally put deliver, but what I meant was pickup, they can't stop that? Anyways.
They forced me to leave a 26% tip on the screen. I have to leave a tip.
No, it's just fucking insane because, again, in no way am I making fun of anyone who has, yes, prices have gone up and of course, inflation matters and economy and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, but this idea that you can say that sentence where you go, I understand they care about their dead relatives in Gaza, but also fucking that shit. I mean,
but these people have perspective, okay?
I can't imagine being sharing Eliza's perspective on this at all. This idea that I don't like her vibe on Israel. Which one?
I'm not exactly pumped about her Israel vibe.
Yes. Like, you mean the thing where she's callous in a way against Palestinians that sounds equally, if not more genocidal than Biden? Is it that? There's part of me that has a lot of trouble fully understanding where these people are coming from when it comes to believing that Democrats are in any way better on Israel than Republicans. I'm not saying that there aren't some elected officials that have been better. Of course there have been. And I think there's a larger proportion of them in the, quote, Democratic Party. But when we're talking about individual candidates, when we're talking about Bill Clinton, you know, like, I need to play this clip of Bill Clinton recently in Michigan.
It's not just individual candidates and individual personalities. It's the ones they choose to trot out at the key moments.
Yes, exactly.
Who do you go to? You go to Barack Obama,
right,
with his folksy, if you're a Muslim, which is a legitimate, valid thing to be. Who cares about human life, which is valid and worth caring about. Why would you vote for a man who called you a name one time?
Yeah.
We
It's
never
a
called you
whataboutism
names.
election. It's a whataboutism election campaign. It's
If you like your apartheid state, you can keep it.
You can keep it. No, it really is. I mean, this is the level of whataboutism when it comes to this has been insane this whole time, and it's just funny to me because the care that Kamala has taken to make sure that people like Eliza Schlesinger and anyone else who is this like pro-Israel Dem, the amount of care she's taken to make sure that they understand that she is going to let Israel finish the job. It's just so much that I'm like, where are you getting this? Where are you getting this idea from? It's like when the right wing says like, oh, you're going to elect a communist like Harris. We all laugh because we go, I fucking wish, dog. But it's the same kind of brain rot with these Zionists in the Democratic Party, where they somehow are just like, I don't like the way she talks about Israel. Like, fucking, what do you mean? Okay,
But hold on.
Yes, please.
I don't know this Eliza person. Was the implication of I'm not pumped about her Israel vibe that she's not sufficiently pro-Israel?
Yes.
Or
I think the wording in her statement there is also meant to be like it's intentionally ambiguous. Like, oh no, when I said this, what I meant was in the like, I'm not pumped that her vibe is so genocidal. And when knowing her history with posting this shit, which she has, early on, she saw the amount of people who were, trash talking others like Amy Schumer and, Sarah Silverman. She kind of like was like, I'm gonna not post my unvarnished thoughts about this. But her history has essentially been to accuse people on the left of and doing anti-Semitism like constantly.
Yeah.
So the idea that when she says she is not for not pumped about Kamala's Israel vibe, that is for sure coming from a place of being like, I don't like this idea that she's gonna go out there and try to do a two-state solution. Like that's
Matt,
that's my reading of it.
What it means is that she probably got mistargeted on social media.
Yeah.
Because as you well know, the Kamala Harris campaign is targeting Jews with messages that say,
Yes.
Kamala's the
Yes.
biggest supporter of Israel in U.S. history.
Right.
And then they show advertisements to Muslims and Arab voters saying Kamala's gonna fight tooth and nail for a ceasefire. And
Yes.
it's like they probably just mistargeted to her and
Yes.
showed her the wrong ad.
Yes, exactly.
but-
Yeah. And people were just like, "Oh man, she's reading all this stuff about how Kamala wants peace, and she's like, I do not like this vibe. I am not pumped about this whole idea of two-state solution," which is just a fucking crazy thing to think in general. I mean, it's like if you are in any way thinking that a presidential candidate who talks about a two-state solution is somehow pro-Palestine, I'm sorry, but you just clearly have you have not really read about this issue for very long. This is new to you. You are new if you are like, well, she does say she's pro two-state solution. I had somebody who wrote to me who was mad that I had like a Kamala tweet that was critical of her answers whenever it came to questions about Israel and Palestine and the genocide. And he wrote, is like, this is going to be, this, you shouldn't criticize because this is someone who just said they want a two-state solution. Like, what more do you want? And I mean, if our last segment has showed us anything, it's that means nothing. It means nothing.
Well, I would say it actually does have a meaning. It means forever
true.
apartheid.
Yes.
That's what two-state solution means.
Yes, it
right?
does.
It means I support Israel's permanent presence in the West Bank and Gaza. I support the status quo, which is actually a one-state solution. We're living a one-state reality. And so if you're talking about a two-state solution, you're just delusional. You're just denying the reality of the world that we live in. And that's Kamala in a nutshell.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but like bringing out Bill Clinton to be the person who's going to talk about Israel, Palestine, like in Michigan, and having him say this which this clip, which I'll play in a second, is just, if there's ever any indicator as to what the norm, what the median feeling about Israel and Palestine is in the Democratic Party, I think this clip sums it up pretty well.
Talk about the hardest issue here in Michigan is the Middle East. I have to be careful what I say because there's only one president at a time, and none of us can get ahead of where we're going.
When he says there's only one president at a time, I think he's talking about Benjamin Netanyahu. There we go.
But I think we're going to have to essentially start again on the peace process. I understand why young Palestinian and Arab Americans in Michigan think too many people have died. I get that. But if you lived in one of those kibbutzim,
Kibbutzim, but I don't believe him.
Moshavim.
Everyone who was on the flight log should have to spend the rest of their lives looking like they opened the Ark of the Covenant. Yes.
And he's not looking good.
No, he's not.
Where the people there were the most pro two-state solution of any of the Israeli communities. Were
this
the ones
fucking
right
talking
next
point.
to Gaza.
Yeah.
And Hamas butchered them.
Yeah, that's how they got repaid for their
Yeah.
for
Right.
their
for peace.
humanitarianism.
Yes.
Yes. And what he's doing here is he's asking Palestinian and Arab and Muslim Americans to engage in the put yourself in their shoes. What would you do if you were them?
Yes. It's talking.
That is
talking
a
down to them in a way that is incredibly insulting because it assumes that they have not at any point thought to themselves, I wonder what it's like to be someone else. Like that is what the fuck.
But it also accompanies an absolute prohibition on doing the same thing
to
the people who did the so-called inexplicable thing that you're describing.
Yes.
What would you do, Bill Clinton, if you had woken up on October 7th inside of a prison, the only way to get out of which is to break out?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
what if you were
have
born,
become, which is the sin that Ta-Nehisi Coates committed by saying, I don't know that I would have had some kind of moral principle stopping me from breaking out and causing some mayhem if that had been my life. And he's asking us to do that for, sympathetic left-wing Israeli victims of the massacres on October 7th.
And he's revealing his true self here, right? Because he spent 8 years in the White House acting as Israel's lawyer, right? You recall the negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians were mediated by the United States negotiating team. And in fact, you even have anecdotes from people like Diana Boutou, whereby the Palestinian delegation would be handed a draft that would have in the margins the comments that were accidentally left by the Israelis, which had to approve the draft before it was sent onto the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And so his only worldview is the only worldview I am able to empathize with, if I'm able to understand, is the Israeli perspective. He acted as Israel's lawyer for 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was instrumental in cementing into a false sense of history the notion that the Palestinians really could have had it all.
Yeah.
At Taba and Camp David under his auspices, but they walked away from the most generous peace offer in history.
Yeah. Which looked a lot like this.
Yeah.
Looked a lot like fucking Area C, A, and B.
In the lead up to Camp David in July 2000, Arafat realized that Ehud Barak had an election coming up. There was so much distance between the two sides. There was no chance that a peace deal would be reached in just a couple of months. And he said, look, I'm willing to go to Camp David under one condition. You do not blame me if things fail. And then what did Clinton do? He blamed Arafat, of course.
Yeah.
He betrayed him. He sold him out.
Shlomo Ben-Ami, the foreign minister of Israel at the time, went on to say that had he been a Palestinian, he would have walked away as well. He would have rejected Camp David.
Yeah, Camp David was a joke. It was, how do we present the Palestinians some peace deal in which the Israeli military retains control of everything? We're going to retain control of the Jordan.
How do we make them an offer they can't accept?
Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And then Clinton, of course, goes on in this speech of all the gall to talk about Jews' religious title to the land. He calls it Judean Samaria.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I have the rest of the clip. I don't know if it includes that, but let's get a little bit more.
The people who criticize it are essentially saying, yeah, but look how many people you've killed in Ritalin. So how many is enough for you to kill to punish them for the terrible things they did? That all sounds nice until you realize, what would you do if it was your family
There you go.
and you hadn't done anything but support a homeland for the Palestinians, and one day they come for you?
You know, it's true. I think what I would do is suddenly flip my entire worldview and values on their head and become a hateful fucking bigot, which I had never been before.
Right. Until this moment. Yeah.
No, Clinton, I would probably do what people like Mao Zedong did and what Noah Katzman did, right? Who we've had on the show. I would recognize, and or what Nurit Pellet did when her daughter years ago was killed. I believe by a suicide bomber. I would say loudly and clearly, without hedging on my grief at all or whatever emotions I have privately, I would say, I don't blame the killers. I blame the killer government that created them and that made sure that they would have no options.
Yeah. Joel Biden, a professor of Middle East history based out of Stanford, I believe, came out with a similar message on October 7th, 2024. And in fact, he has was it a niece or a nephew who was killed on October 7th. He has family in some of those kibbutzim in the Gaza envelope. And he says, look, like, what is happening in the name of defending the kibbutzim, in the name of protecting Israel's genocide? And this is the opposite of what I would have hoped. So you have so many examples of family members of the victims who were killed, who refused to accept a genocide being carried out in the name of protecting Israelis or somehow defending Israel.
Right. Yeah. Or even in, service of getting justice for their killed family member. Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't understand or like I couldn't put myself in the shoes of someone who's filled with rage and vengeance. But what I will not accept is this idea that is what a government should follow. That's we should base all policy on the rage and vengefulness of people who are recently bereaved, and the idea that is the norm,
as if the rage and vengeance came mainly from those families.
Right, exactly.
Fuck that.
Yes.
It was imposed upon them.
Yes,
it had to be sold to that entire country, which is why the massacres that did happen and were documented on film were not enough. That's why there had to be 40 beheaded babies. That's why there had to be a baby in an oven. That's why there had to be systematic, planned mass rape of our precious Jewish women. That's why all of these things had to be part of the narrative, because without that, there wasn't enough rage and vengeance organically brewing in the hearts of those very, if I had to stereotype the kinds of people he's describing, they're sensitive, they're emotional, they're bereaved, they're heartbroken about the situation, and they have retained the capacity somehow inside the Israeli crucible for some kind of human empathy and putting themselves in the shoes of the people that they're not supposed to put themselves in the shoes of, i.e. the human animals 5 kilometers away on the other side of that fucking wall. Yeah. And this fucking move that Clinton makes of, well, it sounds good to be really upset that 40,000 people or 100,000 people or 200,000 people have died, until you ask yourself this question: what would you do? As if there is no other answer than the one he's just sadly implying is the only one.
And just to finish this, the way that he puts it right here. Listen to this.
Slaughter the people in your village. You would say, well, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not keeping score that way.
I'm not keeping score that way is the way that he puts that. This idea of like, it might sound, nice and reasonable even to be like, how many more dead people do you need in Gaza when there's already been 40,000, quote unquote, the official number, right? And he's saying, oh, we're not keeping score that way. So what does that mean? Does that mean because that is how numbers work. Is you can kill however many people you want, and you go, oh, don't worry, I'm not keeping score that way. Like, what the fuck kind of logic is that?
You're only keeping score
Genocidal
on October
smorgasbord.
7th, right? Like the October 6th, there was no scoreboard. October 8th,
Right.
there was no scoreboard. But October
Yes.
7th, everyone was keeping score. Everyone knows
Yes.
exactly how many Israelis were killed on October
Exactly.
7th, down to the exact number, 764.
Well,
Yes.
But I think-
usually rounding up
Yeah,
in
right.
the telling of it, but
Yes.
still.
Look, I think
I
if I
mean,
would just...
I think was it Kamala who trotted out the 1,400 number? I mean, into October of this year, it was Obama. Obama's tweet said
1,400.
1,400
1,400. I was
Israeli
like,
civilians. It's just wrong in so many ways. What were you going to say, Zach?
well, the 1,400 tweets like, Barack, go back to your yacht out in the Pacific because you're not paying attention to what's been happening. But look, I think what's especially insidious about this kind of talking about the kibbutzim and the moshavim in the Gaza envelope and emphasizing like the history of those communities. Well, let's talk about the history of those communities. Why are there so many towns a mile, 2, 3, 4 miles right on the border of Gaza? You guys probably know the answer to this.
Yes.
But guess
I
what?
lived on one of them for 10 months.
The reason those communities exist in the first place, Be'eri, Re'im, Kfar Aza, Kfar Aza, these communities were built in the 1940s for the purposes of expanding the borders of the Yishuv, of the Jewish community in Palestine, to take over land and to conquer territory and to establish a front line and to put civilians on the front line, to use Israeli civilians as human shields.
Right.
And regrettably, I mean, this is the sad truth of October 7th, but they eventually served the purpose for which they were originally built. Tragically so.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And
the most popular folk song of early Zionism that made it into American popular culture, the Weavers, the good communist Weavers, Pete Seeger and Ronnie Hayes and Lee Hayes and Ronnie Gilbert and Fred Hellerman, they sang Tsena Tsena, Tsena 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 dun, 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 which is a song. The lyrics are, "Come, you young pretty girls of the Moshav, of the Moshava, the soldiers are coming home, come greet them." And
Nice.
it's, so it was this fascist frontier song of come greet the young conquering.
I love it because it's more sexual Zionism, and
It's
my thoughts about that.
100%.
I mean,
Pro.
these communities partook in the atrocities and the ethnic cleansing on in 1948.
Yeah.
Right? These communities were the ones who expelled Arabs from Israel. They were the direct participants. We have anecdotes and evidence of people who helped establish those communities. One of the founding members of Be'eri, who founded that settlement in 1946, he partook in the massacres and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in 1948. And then what happened after 48? Israel expanded the Gaza envelope, built another dozen-some settlements, including Nachal Oz, which stands for Nachalim Mul Aza, Nachal soldiers standing across from Gaza. And in the 1950s, Israel carried out countless raids into Gaza in 1953, in 1955. In 1956, they reoccupied Gaza. And guess where their soldiers were based in and where their military HQ was based in when they carried out those raids, slaughtering Palestinians in Gaza? Well, guess what? They were based in those communities.
And we could read Moshe Dayan's eulogy of one of those soldiers who was killed in one of those raids from, I think, 1952 or 53, who said, we shouldn't blame the Palestinians who killed this young soldier. They were doing what they had to do. We're trying to conquer their land. They're not going to like it. We just need to keep the faith. We need to keep
Just
going. But he understood. He understood, as the editor of Haaretz does, which we can talk about some other time, that the Palestinians who committed those acts were committing acts of resistance.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It is nice on some level, I guess, that now on some of these kibbutzim, there have congregated communities of lefty, pro-coexistence, pro-humanitarian, Jews with good feelings towards Palestinians, Jews with positive attitudes towards Palestinians, Jews who are willing to criticize their own government, maybe some Jews who are willing to go to jail for not refusing in their own army. But the sins of the father will visit the other generations. That's in our Bible too, I think. And the notion that somehow we have the right to just have the right politics and live in these places and be immunized from the consequences of how those places got there in the first fucking place.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not how life works, not for human beings.
And I can't help but fume a little extra at this continued, whatever you call it, trope of trotting out the idea that it doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter how pro-peace you are. You can be as anti-Zionist Jew. Hamas is still going to get you. Because Hamas has one thing on their mind, and it's killing all the Jews. This constant refrain that, obviously we all get this all the time from people who are Zionists who are telling us that, oh, you think they'll let you live because you're one of the good ones? All with the narrative that we are, that first of all, that Hamas exists everywhere. That this is not a very distinctly Israeli issue. And also with the idea that on October 7th, they went out in search of leftists, or the idea that it's like these guys, they didn't care if you were left or right. And it's like, well, you're right about that. They cared if you were an occupier on their fucking land and an oppressor of their people and a genocider. That's what they cared about. That's what
Hamas
they were
Elmer Fudd. Shh, I'm hunting leftists.
yeah, be very quiet.
You guys saw that tweet? Was it someone who, I think, it was the tweet God, if I was doing Molly at a rave outside of a concentration camp, I probably deserve to be attacked too.
Yeah. I mean, and
sorry, we're gonna get kicked off for that.
Well, this is the thing. If not, this is the thing. If not deserved to,
right,
could reasonably expect to be.
May
not have the right to demand that I not be. That's the thing.
Right.
It's because these rights to Israeli security, no matter where they want to be or what they want to be doing, are enforced with violence.
Yes.
That right to life for Israelis to do Israeliness wherever and in whatever way they want comes literally at the expense of Palestinian freedom.
Yeah.
In each and every case.
Exactly right.
And I think the blindness to the realities of your own society, that I'm sorry, but it can only take you so far in terms of empathy from people. I think I do understand that there is a huge blindness when it comes to this, especially among, Israelis, not being able to understand the society that they live in, that outside of Israel, it is very strange to throw a rave outside of a concentration camp, outside of a giant open air prison. But to expect everyone to be to share your view, that is somehow not weird, I think that's asking a lot. I don't know. That seems like it's asking a lot. It's asking a lot of people to be like, no, I get it. Sometimes you got to have a really big party next to the Warsaw Ghetto.
You do not have the right to be immune to the consequences of your illusions.
Yeah.
No one has that right. I'm sorry. No one has that right.
Yeah.
You can hope, you can roll the dice, you can lament, you can cry, you can mourn, and you can feel any kind of way you want to feel about it. But when reality catches up, it's not about you deserved to die. It's not about anyone, but it's a question of, could we have reasonably predicted that this would happen? Yes. Would it be reasonable to expect something like this would never eventually come to pass as long as this is the status quo? No, it's insane.
It's insane to think that. It's insane. This is I think probably one of those many moments in which you have to convince people that they are not the crazy ones for having these thoughts. You are not crazy. I got to play this thing. You are not crazy.
But I'm not
You're normal. You're normal to look at that situation and be like, it seems like a bad idea, and to think that they were not going to get at some point have something happen. It was built for it.
Now I've got suicidal tendencies playing in my head. I'm not crazy, anti-Zionist. You're the one who's crazy.
That's great.
Look, one of the most common things you'll hear about October 7th is that it came out of nowhere. Wow, so unexpected.
Yeah.
And yet, 2018, 2019, Israel slaughters Palestinians in the hundreds who are marching for peace, unarmed Palestinians, protesting as part of the Gaza March to Return. 2021, Israel slaughters 250 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. 2022, more violent than 2021. 2023, on the eve of October 7th, more violent than 2022. You had a pogrom on October 5th.
In Area A, right?
I think Huara is, I believe, Area B, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
But you had pogroms. You had a half dozen pogroms in 2023 on the eve. You had another Gaza March of Return-like protest throughout the month of September, just days before October 7th.
Yeah.
This was all predictable. Palestinians have been protesting and resisting for years and years and years. What the hell did you expect would happen?
And sometimes they've been just quietly putting their heads down and living and enduring. It doesn't matter what they do, whether they resist, don't resist peacefully, resist forcefully.
And what do you think that those those leftists that that people like Bill Clinton and all the other Hasbaras trot out, for their Hasbara needs. What do you think they were fighting for in terms of the ones who wanted peace, the ones who wanted coexistence? They knew this could happen. This was the result of, this is what they were trying to stop. Ask any anti-Zionist Jew who's been like doing this work, who's been in this fight, whatever, for a long period of time. We've all seen Israel as this powder keg. It's not just been, obviously, we want the end of the oppression of Palestinians and we want, Palestine to be free. But we also don't want to see mass slaughters of Jewish people or mass slaughters of Israelis. Like, this is peace is peace for both, And right now what you have is apartheid, which is security only for one people.
What has happened?
Barely, yeah.
People don't talk about the number of Israelis and Jews killed since October 7th, because how do you talk about the suffering of the perpetrators when there's 2 million people being starved to death?
Yeah.
But of course, inside Israel, the reporting from December 2023 was that you had more than 10,000 Israelis who had been injured. This is almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it, 20,000 now, 30,000 now? And you're telling me this war, this genocide is somehow in the interests of Israel and the Jewish people, sending Jews off to die? Genocide is obviously dangerous for the victims, but it's also dangerous for the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And Israel is just sending Jews off to die. I mean, can you imagine if another country was doing this, just sending tens of thousands of Jews off to die?
It's a good thing that trauma ends with the person who's traumatized. It's a good thing it doesn't ripple forward into the future. Because at least we can contain this thing, At least it won't spill over into the nightmares of the unborn children.
Yes.
2 generations, 3 generations from now.
That's what I love about trauma. Trauma has it's a nice closed book. It has a nice
The body
ending.
doesn't keep score.
The body does not keep score, famously.
Maybe there's our episode title. The body forgets the score.
But just to round back to electoral politics, because it's election night in America, everyone. And obviously, I think one of the things on this podcast that maybe people have noticed is the fact that both Daniel and I have an aversion to talking about electoral politics in America during a genocide. And I think one of the reasons for that is not only because it's gauche, but also because of the system that we currently live in. Whoever loses tonight, Netanyahu wins. That's just how it is. And
am I reading right that he fired Gallant today?
Oh, for real?
That news just broke like 20 minutes before we started recording.
Oh, damn. R.I.P. Gallant. I didn't even have
Gallant.
Sir Gallant. I didn't have time to make a Imogen Heap Suck My Dick remix to Gallant being fired. Oh, well, that'll be in the next one. But yeah,
In her schmal. אין מים, אין אוכל, hakol sagur. That's literally word for word what he said about, there will
Dude,
be no
Daniel.
water.
Got
no
to teach me
electricity.
Hebrew.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. You've got a great Hebrew accent.
With
Yeah.
my Hebrew accent and your Arabic accent, we're just
And me British accent. Together. We could take over the world.
we could redo the Balfour Declaration. Do a whole inception. Just rewrite
Yes.
history.
Yes.
We need to go back to 1917.
As long
we
as I
need
get to be Morgenthau, then we're good.
we got to do a live reading of the Balfour Declaration.
Oi!
Yeah,
Whereas,
it's me, Arthur Balfour, yeah? So, me speaking about putting all the Jews together.
Without hurting the rights of all the non-Jewish Muslims and Christians in Palestine.
Everybody, please, yeah. We could do it. If there's one thing British people are good at, it's putting people in land that's not theirs and everyone having peace, yeah. Oh, okay. So
Electoral politics?
electoral politics. So yeah, it's been one of I think it's been contentious. I think we were talking earlier in the break that I think we've haven't seen so much of the like pro-Palestine left so split when it comes to this. There's a lot of infighting, and I think I think it's some of it is justified and some of it is not. And yeah, I guess let's talk about what this election means for the Palestinian people.
what should the Palestinians do, Zach?
Yeah.
What's your plan for them?
Do you like genocide with a side of mashed potatoes or a side of carrots? Right?
I do like mashed potatoes.
Do you like snow ethnic cleansing or like medium paced ethnic cleansing?
Yeah.
Do you like 100,000 Palestinian dead or 110,000 Palestinian dead?
Yeah. It's where we're at, and it's been difficult because I've seen whatever happens with this election. It's like I've been waiting for this shit to be over for a while, and I'm not just talking about the genocide. I'm talking about this fucking election, and the reason that I've been so annoyed at it is because what I see is not enough cynicism. If that sounds weird, but I feel like not enough cynicism of the electoral process and too much hope. Do you guys share that view that there seems to be a lot of rancor between different factions of the pro-Palestinian left, where you just kind of want to take both people aside and go, hey guys, as long as money controls our politics, who the fuck, what is this fight for?
I don't know. Look,
I'm very cynical though. You're a more hopeful man than I am, Daniel.
Well, not necessarily, but I am compassionate to those whose give a shit reservoirs haven't fully run out. They have something to give a shit for. There are people who have issues that matter to them in a very visceral way, and they calculate that that people make the case, we're not voting for our leader, we're voting for our opponent, we're voting for our adversary, we're voting for which tyrant we would like to organize under. And I'm not an organizer. I'm a guy who spouts off on YouTube and Spotify.
You talk shit.
Right. There are people who organize, and organizing happens under material conditions, and people have takes on. Now, people disagree even on those lines. Some people will say, well, it's better to organize under a right-wing Republican government than under a right-wing Democratic government. That, in fact, Democrats can get more evil done because they have the veneer of, pro-social values, and even on the grounds of abortion. These are valid debates to have. They're tactical. Fucking, if Noam Chomsky can put out a blue no matter who argument.
Right, yeah.
He's not a dupe.
One thing I've observed. Oh, go ahead.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not persuaded by it, and I'm much more drawn to the kind of, pox on both their houses, and let's let the Democrats feel the pain of what they've wrought here, especially in this case.
Sure.
But I don't know what to say about it.
I think the narrative is that, well, if you want revenge, well, then you're going to vote against, you're not going to vote for Kamala. But I think that's the wrong framing. I think the framing is, how do you push the Democrats to be more anti-genocide than they are today?
Right.
And I think if you take that perspective, then you come up with some different conclusions. Number one, if you do develop a third-party bloc that can then, because if you have 3, 4, 5, 6% of the vote, you have a real voting bloc, and you can now apply pressure on the mainstream Democrats. If they want the vote, if they want the anti-genocide vote, they have to heed some of the demands.
Right.
And this was, of course, Nora Arakat's demand when she was offered the vice presidential slot on Jill Stein's ticket. She said, look, I will happily join this ticket if and only if you, if and only if I think at the time it was Biden, but basically if Kamala or Biden agree to impose an arms embargo on Israel, then we will drop out of the race. You have a real demand, and you have a real voting bloc, and you can, and you have something to offer. So I think, so my question is, and I think, by the way, one way you push the Democrats to become more anti-genocide is if they're in the opposition. Recall that it's today, you have people like Yair Lapid in Israel talking about the suffering of the Israeli military. He just came out a few days or a week or two ago talking about so many Israeli soldiers are being killed, a narrative which is no one is talking about in Israel. Why is he saying that? Because he's in the opposition.
Right.
And so if you have an opposition Democratic Party who is now has to sort of present itself as the opposite or as somehow differentiated from the current presidential candidate, well, guess what? That will push them to become more anti-genocide. So I think there are arguments to be made here on both sides. I'm not here claiming
if only those in that Democratic Party who elected them, who elevated to power on the grounds that they're gonna be the ruckus bringers, had an appetite for that. Did you see AOC's video where she's like, she's talking to Tim Walz, and she's like, "Oh my God, please save me from another 4 years of having to wake up every day and do resistance against Donald Trump." Shut the fuck up.
Oh my God.
What, are you looking forward to 4 years of brunch with the Democrats?
Right.
Do we really believe at this point that you're really going to push back against the party of Mama Bear Pelosi?
Yeah. What is then what?
What's your fucking job?
You're telling me you've had trouble waking up during Trump's administration? The last fucking year has been insane.
Yeah.
The idea that, oh my God, there's just like, there's so much of this that like is about this personal feeling of having to fight, having to work. And here's the thing, like, I understand a regular person or a person with a job who is like, save me from the Trump news cycle, because
save me from the horse in the hospital.
It is incredibly annoying, 100%. But in terms of like the idea that we're going to that somehow like a Kamala presidency placates us in any way, as people who believe in anything, I'm just like, you're fucking crazy. And if anything, you should be fighting. That's what you're supposed to do.
Not only that, as if Trump is any less annoying when he's out of power, as if MAGA goes away.
Yeah, I know.
When you
shit stays annoying. Shit stays annoying. There's no amount of scorn that's going to get rid of.
And the Democrats stay obsessed with him, whether he's in power or not. They act like the resistance party towards him. Yeah, the hashtag resistance has been obsessed with him even during Biden's administration.
Right. And this has been, a constant back and forth of Trump being president and being like, still acting like he's not president, and Biden being president and acting like he's not president. And this is
insanity.
why I can't, I get people. I think it's good that people aren't like me. I think it's good that people aren't as cynical as I am. Because I think hope is good. If I learned anything from Shawshank Redemption, it's that if you lose hope completely, you end up like Brooks, but also Brooks had hope, and maybe that's why it doesn't matter. It's convoluted. But if I learn anything from Shawshank Redemption, it's that it is good to have hope. And
where are you going to place your hope?
Sandy Beach and say Wataneo? I don't know, dude. Like, out of the country. But yes, it's like when you're placing your hope in electoral politics, I can't help but be like, listen, I want you guys to vote your heart and vote your head, but also.
And at this point, we want you to have voted your heart or have voted.
Yeah,
but
it's a little
you
too
hear
late.
this, the polls will be closed. What were you
I
gonna
think
say,
the
Zach?
ultimate lesson here is that activism and social change does not happen at the ballot box.
Yeah.
It happens on the streets. It happens by lobbying Congress. It happens by shutting down Elbit Factory.
On podcasts. It happens by
That's right.
podcasting and making dumb puns.
That's right.
It happens by shutting down Elbit factories.
Hell
right?
yeah.
Yes.
This is how you change the world. You do not change
Yes.
the world at the ballot box.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but people could still make a case. Okay, we know we don't change the world, but we take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, however long you have to stand in line. You go, you pull a lever once every 4 years, and you make a tiny notch and try to push things incrementally in a direction towards less harm. You know,
Yeah.
And I will not fault anyone for that. But what I won't tolerate for 1 second is the cynical attempt to emotionally manipulate
Yes.
voters in this particular election cycle, much less Palestinian, Muslim, Arab voters,
Yeah.
or any of us with intelligences and moral consciences, into any calculus that says, yeah, genocide is bad, but, or
Right.
and, yes, and, fuck you.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the insanity of the Harris campaign that she's run, which is that you have the polling data is very, very clear. Democrats oppose Israel's actions in Gaza. 77% of Democrats, according to an ABC poll that came out in August,
There's
Support-
ABC again.
support an arms embargo on Israel.
Yeah.
You're telling your own base, go fuck yourself, so that Palestinians can get slaughtered in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. And it's stuff like that, like, you know, it just adds to my cynicism. ABC, always be cynical, because I can't help but go like my entire impetus for talking about this on a podcast, for doing Bad Hasbara, it was the idea of the normalization of this conversation to stop treating Israel as if it has a special status. It is a state that can do no wrong. It is a state that is allowed to do genocide. And the idea that more and more people are seeing clearly that Israel is not the good guy on the world stage. They're very clearly the bad guy, maybe one of the worst bad guys we've seen in a long time. And almost and more like especially bad because we are directly supporting their genocide. And the hope being that people, you know, get wise to this, get woke on Palestine, and stop electing leaders who are paid off by AIPAC or you know, ones who are compromised by the Israel lobby. And then you see like a poll that says 77%, you know, support, you know, an arms embargo, and that not make a dent in the platform of the Democratic Party. And all I can say is I don't know what's left.
Yeah, like what
do we do?
Like what is the equation? Like what percentage would we need of those 77% if that opposition translated into a change in voting behavior? At what threshold would that 77% matter, except anecdotally and statistically?
All right.
It comes back to Citizens United. Like you said, Matt, this is the Supreme Court case that said corporations are human beings and super PACs can spend as much money as they like to elect anyone they want. And that's why you have all of these pro-genocide candidates getting elected to the U.S. Congress. You know, they took down Jamal Bowman with $15 million of AIPAC money funneled through the super PACs.
Cory Bush as well.
$6 million to unseat Cory Bush. They offered $20 million to both Hill Harper and Nasser Beydoun to take down Rashida Tlaib, but they rejected the blood money. They tried to take down Summer Lee. They tried to take down Ilhan Omar. This comes back to the Benjamins. I hate to use that phrase, but I mean, they're just telling us the playbook.
And he said, well. Looks like you finally revealed your true colors.
My middle name is Benjamin.
All about both of you. Fucking Octopus's Gardens over here.
I have an octopus tattoo, actually.
Good. But yeah, no, yes, so it's in this like kind of like state of like cynicism and hopelessness that I go into this election that's happening right now, and I can't help but feeling like until our praxis goes beyond the ballot box, I say maybe try to relax on the idea that try to relax on the factionalism that we're doing within the like pro-Palestine left, where we just go like, fuck you if you're voting for Jill Stein. I'm sorry, but like fuck off if you're someone who is voting if mad at someone for voting third party. You need to cut that shit out.
And can we park it with words like existential? Like
Yes.
This is the most existential. No. We don't get. No, I'm sorry.
You don't get to talk about existence when there is a genocide happening. I'm sorry. This theoretical idea of your existential threat, if that has not been used cynically to create and harbor a genocide, like.
But we have to do genocide first so that we don't get genocided.
That's right.
I recommend, by the way, you mentioned Noura Erakat, and I'm so glad that you spoke her name before I did, because your pronunciation of her name is so wonderful, and more accurate. But she was on Brianna Joy Gray's podcast, Bad Faith. It's a very good interview, and she spoke about how there's also this completely illusory idea that you can cleanly separate what America does abroad from the regime here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can preserve American rights at home, but we just have to kind of
sacrifice a few people.
Right.
Yeah.
As if the draconian tools of oppression that don't come home from somewhere.
Yes.
Haven't been well honed and practiced. And she goes through a really compelling historical list going back over a century.
Yeah, I mean, how many Israeli police are in the United States? Israeli military police, Israeli military are training U.S. police departments across the country. This has been an ongoing partnership that has only strengthened over the past many decades. This is their little Israel.
Yeah.
Do you know how many kibbutzim there are in Arkansas?
I mean, there's probably none.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
they're called cop cities.
Look, this idea that the United States, I mean, I think there is one other thing to say here, which is that we like to exceptionalize the United States' support for Israel, but I think that's a mistaken understanding of history. In fact, the United States was the biggest supporter of apartheid South Africa after the United Nations declared that an unbinding resolution to impose arms embargo on South Africa. Guess who are the two states continuing to supply arms? Little Daddy and Big Daddy. United States and Israel. Right? Who did the United States support across Latin America in the 70s and 80s? We supported the dictatorships. Who does the United States support in the Middle East? Egypt? Saudi Arabia, okay, Jordan. These are all dictatorial monarchies.
Yeah.
Who did the United States support in the war on Yemen? We were bombing Yemenis children for a decade.
Yeah.
Okay, who did the United States support in Iraq? We destroyed that country and killed 1 million Iraqis. Right? This idea that somehow the United States is some force for good in the world. This is a myth. And that's why when you get young people asking the question, why is the U.S. so pro-Israel? I don't get it. Well, that's just they just don't know U.S. history.
Yeah.
We have a deep and a dark history of supporting dictatorships, of undermining human rights, and of supporting settler colonial states and genocides. There's nothing more American than supporting a genocide.
Yeah. Damn, I want to salute a flag right now. That's how I'm feeling a little nationalistic. Let's go. Let's kill those people. But yeah, in summation, when it comes to this, I'm just so glad it's over because, I mean, obviously it won't be over by the time this comes out, but it'll be the beginnings of it. Hopefully by the time the bonus episode comes out, there will be a president-elect. And either way, the job of, I think, I think what I'm doing right now is deputizing myself to say to you one very important thing is that, like, do not be depressed by the outcome of this election, because there is no outcome that is not depressing. And knowing that, know that you had no control at the ballot box. You know, you didn't have. It's not on you that this is a country that is going to continue this genocide no matter who gets to be president. So instead, we got to come back reinvigorated to figure out other ways to end American empire. And we're going to figure it out together on the Bad Hasbara podcast.
Imagining Matt Lieb as Robin Williams hugging the American voter and the listener as Matt Damon. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's only some of you's faults, probably in some way, but mostly not. But yeah, I'm gonna be stoked when it's over.
Yeah.
I voted third party because I live in California and I can do that. And you know, if you voted third party, I appreciate it. If you voted Kamala, hey, we all have our faults. If you voted Trump, yeah, you're also bad. Anyways, I fucking hate electoral politics.
Well,
that's been our episode of Bad Hasbara. I love our nation, and I salute the flag for all the good it's doing in the world. Zach Foster, thank you so much for coming on Bad Hasbara again.
Matt Lieb, Daniel Mate, thanks so much for having me.
Where can
so
people
good to see you, man.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Fuck yeah.
It's my X handle _ Zach Foster, and you can subscribe to my newsletter Palestine Next at PalestineNexus.com. And if you don't mind, just one more plug. I'm actually launching a course on Zionism. If you're still listening to this podcast 2 hours in, then you're gonna love the course because we're offering a history of Zionism. It's kind of a Zionism 101. It launches tomorrow. You can sign up for it at PalestineNexus.com.
Amazing.
That's
I might
beautiful.
just join up. I need to learn some of the basics. I find myself still not quite with a full grasp of the facts I need.
It's a history of Zionism that Zionists don't want you to know about. That's the tagline.
I like it. Well, we will have a link in the show notes. So please click the link and do it right now. Patreon.com/badhasbara for all of the bonus episodes. Plus you get these, episodes of this show a little bit earlier than everyone else. Badhasbara@gmail.com for all your questions, comments, and concerns. All right, everyone. That's been our show. And until next time, from the river to the sea.
What are you complaining for? It's not like you live in Area C.
Jumping jacks was us. Push-ups was us. Krav Maga